One of the embellishments that I'm putting on the mini that I'm creating now is this lollipop flower. And I've used several techniques on this lollipop flower. This leaf has my homemade glimmer mist and only my homemade glimmer mist, which I've put the recipe on my blog for that. This lollipop flower has my homemade shimmers paint as well as glitter, and this is Bumblebee glitter sugar coating that has been mixed with embossing powder, clear embossing powder, and I'm going to show you how I do that. So this flower has several techniques that I've used, so I'm going to go into this construction of this flower. First thing I do is I cut my circles. I use my big kick to cut these circles. These circles I've already put the homemade shimmers on, and this one I haven't. I put the homemade shimmers already on those. So the first thing I do is I take my trusty black soot. This is a Tim Holtz pad that I've folded up, and I've put in this little clippy so that I can use it to distress. And so I'm going to distress the edges of this in the black soot. I do that so that it has some dimension when I'm putting my flower together. Hello, Perfect Prince Dylan. How are you?
Poppy.
Poppy was tickling you?
Yes.
Okay. So I do that so that it has some dimension. This is my pad, my Tim Holtz pad. And so that's the first thing I do. The next thing I do is I make my homemade shimmers. And I use Mod Podge, or I use my Crystal Effects, or the glossy accents, either one, depending on what I'm doing. If I'm going to color it with alcohol ink, I use glossy effects or crystal effects, glossy accents or crystal effects. If I'm not going to be using any re-inker or alcohol inks, then I use my Mod Podge, and I use the matte finish on my Mod Podge. So I just pour just ever the tiniest amount of my Mod Podge on my board. The tiniest amount ever. Isn't that neat, Prince Dylan? Okay. All right. So then I use either Pearl X, or I use Perfect Pearls, and I add the amount I want. Now the amount of Perfect Pearls or the amount of Pearl X that you add determines how deep your shimmer is going to be. So I put that in my Mod Podge, and then I use just a popsicle stick, and then I take my brush and I mix that with my Mod Podge. I have way too much of this. This is going to be in excess. You need just ever the slightest, the littlest bit to do this. And then I take my piece and I just generously apply that shimmers to that piece. And I use my, which I can't find out here. I use my piercing tool, or my awl, to hold that down. Okay, the next thing I do, this is a tray that you get when you have frozen dinners that you're going to serve. Not that I serve frozen dinners. And I take my piece and I put that in that tray, and then I take my heat gun and I heat that. Now the next step that I'm going to do with this particular flower is I'm going to add the glitter that's fairly dry. I bought these Smart Foam bulletin boards for like 25 cents at Michael's one time, and I cut them up and I use them as a base when I want to when I'm going to be doing a lot of embossing of small items. So I pierce the center of that, and then I take my Versamark and I coat my lollipop flower with my Versamark. Get a really, really, really generous coating on that. Oops. Okay. Then I take my paper piercer and I put it in the center of that. I bring over my tray, and I liberally coat that with clear embossing powder. I tap it off. Again, I still keep it on my foam. I take my heat gun. Now at this point I've mixed my glitter with UD, and I've got my spoon that I'm going to be using to put that on my embellishment. So I take my heat gun and I heat that up. Hot. I take my UD with my I'm going to tap a little bit of that off and reheat it. I do that and that adds the glitter. I don't know if you can see the glitter on that or not. That adds the glitter. Now and I do that to each piece until I get the look I want, which is this look. And that's how I do my lollipop flowers with homemade shimmers.